Hi, welcome back. Nice to see you coming and joining me again. We're getting ready, set here to go, reading from the trilogy today. Oh yeah, I got my page because I got my marker and I got my eyeballs on. So let's see what we got here today. Where did we leave off? Oh, Maria was happily going into the kitchen to get things ready for offering dessert for Thomas. Let's see what else happens. Okay, there it is. Thomas turns to Ralph and Paul. Now remember, those are the cameramen. And says, "Why don't we all go into the kitchen and enjoy some of Maria's home cooking?" They enter the kitchen through the swinging door that is in the dining room next to the fireplace. It's the original double-sided fireplace that goes into the kitchen as well as the dining room. They see Maria standing on her step stool, pulling dishes from the cabinet near the farm-style sink that has a planter bay window that overlooks the garden, greenhouse, and the chicken coop. Thomas has noticed that the apple pie is already on the serving counter and reaches out to touch the flaky crust as he passes by. Kind of think he's done that before. Paul is quick to notice the aroma in the kitchen and sighs as he says, "Sure smells good in here." Thomas sighs in a remembering way as he says, "It always has." Although Paul is off duty, Ralph is still focused on filming Thomas and his reactions. Walking across the expanse of the kitchen, the three of them join Maria's husband, Bruce, who is already seated at the kitchen table. Bruce has been the foreman of this ranch as long as Thomas can remember. That kitchen table rivals the dining room table for size. After all, they feed a lot of guests at this table, and the kitchen is the second biggest room in the house, as well it should be. Charlie called it the heart of the home and made sure his chief cook had everything she wanted because she was cooking for a whole bunch of folks at a time. Charlie was concerned for her and even made sure her kitchen had 2 very big dishwashers. Well, 3 when you count Bruce. He's always there in the evening to help her wash up those pots and pans. Bruce, dressed in his casual country style, is a short, stocky man. Well, short compared to Charlie, who was 6'6". Actually, Bruce, at 5'10", is medium height. He has a cowboy weathered features about him and is a gentle soul. Maria gives Bruce a piece of pie first, as she lovingly says, "I told you Thomas would want some apple pie." Bruce pats her hand gently as he tenderly replies, "That you did, my dear." Maria turns to the elders and efficiently asks, "Coffee, tea, or milk?" Thomas perks up and quickly asks, "How about a couple of scoops of ice cream for me?" Maria chuckles. Bruce chooses milk. The others agree on coffee, and Maria has her favorite herbal tea. After all the men are comfortably seated and enjoying their pieces of pie, Thomas casually says, "Now I know why Mr. Jones suggested my family stay at the B&B in Butte, and not here. We thought it was just because of the wake. I'll call Barbara in a bit. This sure will be some kind of an adventure." Bruce is wondering what happened and quietly speaks up asking, "Well, how did she take it?" Thomas knows exactly which she he is referring to and gives Bruce that knowing smile as he says, "So you all knew." "Well, Ella probably did just how you anticipated she would. You've been around us since we first moved here, so I'm sure you got it right." Bruce sadly shakes his head from side to side. Maria, who is seated next to Bruce, lovingly speaks up. "She was such an adorable little girl. She loved to play with our children. She was like a big sister for them, and she loved helping with the chickens and Bruce quickly and quietly cuts in and as he broadly smiles, saying, "I couldn't keep her away from those horses." Paul's surprised and says, "Well, she sure has changed from what you two were saying." Ralph gets it, why Charlie set things up like this, and he speaks up. "Charlie sure knew what she would do, didn't he?" Bruce quickly adds, "Yes, and that is exactly why he gave us," pointing to Ralph and Paul, "special directions to help her on this, Thomas, adventure." He quickly cuts in, as he lays his fork on the blue wisteria china plate he has in front of him, and he goes into pondering mode. Thomas looks at Bruce right in the eye. He's wondering, just wondering, what is Uncle Charles up to now? Paul nods his head in agreement and responds, "As you said, Thomas, it will be an adventure." Ralph is standing by the whitewashed wooden paneling next to the back door, still recording the evening activities. He cautiously speaks up. "There are more directions from your Uncle Charlie that you need to know about, Thomas." Paul quickly agrees, "Yeah, and you may not feel they're fair." Thomas sighs and reluctantly says, "Really? What else?" Bruce begins to explain. "You know your Uncle Charlie loved you both." Maria lovingly adds, "Very much," as she is leaning toward Thomas and tenderly patting his hand across the table. Thomas hesitatingly responds, "Okay." Bruce carefully continues, "For this, as you said, adventure, we are to go no farther than Ella can manage. When she wants a break while hiking, we stop. When she says make camp, that is where we make camp. Except when we reach the high meadow. Charlie wants both of you to spend one night in the high meadow." Bruce intently looks at each one of the men, as well as Thomas, to make sure they understand. Paul speaks right up, agreeing as he says, "That makes sense to me. From what I've seen of her tonight, she won't be a happy camper, much less a happy hiker." Thomas is disgusted and quickly sprouts out, "Here we go again, always giving in to what Ella needs or Ella likes or what Ella can or can't do." Ralph quickly positions himself to capture Thomas's reaction. Bruce tries to calm Thomas down a bit. "Both of you have different needs." Thomas is upset and quickly says, "We sure do, and I always have to give in to whatever it is that Ella needs." Maria, in her quiet motherly way, speaks up saying, "It may seem that way." Thomas accusingly says, "Yeah, sure. There you go, sticking up for Ella." Maria patiently continues, "However, perhaps it is a way for everyone to become a better person by looking after the needs of the group and not just for oneself." Bruce looks at Thomas and quietly adds, "It is a free country. You do have the right to choose." Thomas shrugs his shoulders, shakes his head in dismay, then quietly says, "Uncle Charles was always spoiling her. Yet I can see his logic. He really wants her to finish this hike. So he will let her do it her way. Just so she does finish." He slumps over the table for a few moments. Then looking up, he admits, "We did have plenty of overnighters in the high meadows." Okay, I'm in. Doesn't mean I'm going to like it. For whatever reason Uncle Charles has in mind, I'm in. Thomas looks at each of them, then sarcastically adds, and should that be the case, I'm sure Uncle Charles also added that we are not to wake her up in the morning. After all, it's only an adventure. Maria tries not to chuckle as she remembers the many times Ella did just that. Then, still seated, Thomas looks at the four of them and calmly adds, is that all of the special instructions? Bruce stands up, comes over to Thomas, giving him a shoulder hug, and he says, you got it. That's all for now. Then Bruce turns, gathers up some dishes, and takes them to the sink for Maria. Maria stands and begins to pick up the rest of the dessert plates and cups. She looks at Thomas and lovingly says, there are special notes for you in the room from your Uncle Charlie. Tender moments, he calls them. Thomas halfway smiles and hangs his head. Then standing up, looking about as though he's remembering something. Thomas halfway smiles and hangs his head. Remembering. Maria sighs as she says, you certainly are that tall drink of water that Charlie loves so much. Again, Thomas hangs his head, acknowledging her words with a nod of his head, trying not to let that tear fall as he begins to leave the kitchen. Ralph, with camcorder on his shoulder, quietly follows Thomas, who quickly turns and says, really? Ralph shrugs his shoulders and says, just to your door. Thomas slumps his shoulders again. Then, with a big sigh, he stands tall, says goodnight to each of them, then exiting through the swinging saloon-style kitchen door that opens to the foyer, he sadly moves on. Thomas doesn't have far to go. His room is near the kitchen. As he turns right toward the short hallway that leads to his room, he hesitates. Walking slowly to his room, he ponders. Putting his hand on the brass doorknob of his room, he waits. Then Thomas turns to look at the door opposite his room. Without a word, Thomas crosses the little hall and enters Uncle Charlie's bedroom for the night. Well, what do you know? That's the end of chapter 1. Guess we get to be together again to pick up with chapter 2. This adventure goes along a little bit more. Now remember, you can get your book so you can follow around, because I really don't read all the words. I ad-lib here and there. And if you just go to gramajeanbooks.com, you can get your own book and follow along. And then you can make some comments. So, for now, till next time, may the good Lord continue to bless you and yours as you go forth with gentleness, kindness, and caring. Well, bye-bye. Love hugs from Grandma Jean.